Hello, I'm Michael Swanson. I just published a new book titled The War State. It's getting a lot of attention. The book talks about the Cold War origins of today's military-industrial complex and power elite that are bankrupting our country. The book covers the first 20 years after World War II, in which the United States became transformed into a national security state. Now, the book also uses some news sources that have never before been published or used in a book previous to this one that contain some really shocking information in them. Well, one of the things I discovered is that what we've been taught about the Cuban Missile Crisis isn't completely true. We came much closer to nuclear war than you realize. Now, the Cuban Missile Crisis started on October 15, 1962, when CIA U-2 spy planes flying over Cuba spotted large ballistic nuclear missiles capable of reaching Washington, D.C. and much of the rest of the United States. Khrushchev and the Soviet Union had just put them there. Now, President Kennedy, upon finding this out, he immediately held a meeting of his top advisors. Most of them wanted to launch airstrikes to take the missiles out. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, they wanted to invade the island. Now, Kennedy's advisors spent the next week debating on what to do, and the president got on TV and demanded that the Soviet Union withdraw the missiles. He also announced a blockade of the island. However, the Joint Chiefs of Staff still wanted to launch an invasion. They sent Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara and Kennedy a memo saying, quote, "This is no time to be scared." Now, we now know that not all the Joint Chiefs were that hungry for war, but as a body, they were making these demands, and the leading hawk there was Air Force General Curtis LeMay. In one meeting, he told Kennedy that if he didn't attack Cuba and invade it, it'd be worse than the Munich appeasement of Hitler. Days went on with no resolution to the crisis, and the pressures for war built. The Joint Chiefs of Staff put a deadline on Kennedy of Monday, October the 29th, or following Tuesday, to attack. They said if he didn't, the Cubans would have too many of their defenses built up. They started to tell congressmen about their demands, so a war atmosphere grew in Washington, D.C. It all ended, though, because Saturday night, Robert Kennedy met with the Soviet ambassador, and they made a last-minute negotiation that ended the crisis the next morning. Then, the Soviets announced to the world via radio that they would withdraw the missiles. Now, the story we've been told is that the Soviets also had short-range nuclear missiles on Cuba, too, that are sitting on trucks all over the island. The Russians called these Luna missiles, and we called them Froggers. The thing is, they couldn't be destroyed because the trucks could be moved all over the place and hidden in trees, buildings, foliage, anywhere. Our invasion plans called for using 100,000 men to invade the island. It would have been an operation like D-Day, except all of the men would have been killed by these short-range rockets and an atomic blast. Then what? There probably would have been a total nuclear war. Now, here's what's new. The thing is, the story told in the history books and TV specials about the Cuban Missile Crisis is that we didn't know about these trucks at the time. So they say it was just luck that we didn't have a nuclear war. We just lucked out that we didn't invade the island and we resolved the crisis just in time. Dumb luck. Those are the two words Robert McNamara used to describe it. There was a documentary done before he died, an excellent one in fact, called The Fog of War, which he claims he didn't know about these trucks at the time, just found out about them a few days ago after he took a trip to Cuba and Russia and met with his Cuban and Russian counterparts. And they talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis together and about these trucks. However, what I found out in my study that led to this book is that in tape conversations Kennedy made during this crisis, they all knew about them at the time. MacDa's memory is faulty. U-2 spy planes discovered the trucks during the crisis, and Kennedy was told about them Friday morning, the day before the crisis was settled. And the trucks are even referred to in some of the documents surrounding the Cuban Missile Crisis that have been declassified just the past couple of years. I refer to these documents in my book, and I got internet links to them in the footnotes, so you can look them up for yourself and read them. But let me show you something. Let me show you the tape conversation where Kennedy is told about them so you can hear it for yourself. In this tape, he's talking with John McCone, the director of the CIA, and Art Lundhall, who is the CIA's photography expert. Both are meeting with Kennedy, and Lundhall is showing him the YouTube pictures he's placed on easels so he can point at them and talk to him about them.
Ways to do it. This is one of the diplomatic ways. I don't think it'll be successful. The other ways, I think a combination of an airstrike and probably invade, which means we have to carry out both of those with the prospect that they might be fired. Invading is much more serious undertaking than most people realize because of the equipment they have, no better equipment. Because they have a hell of a lot of equipment loaded up these things. You see this on pictures. Very lethal. Stuff things like that. Rocket launchers. Missile carrier or gun carriers. Half tracks and all such things as that. They're equipped to handle them, which I presume these conditions are at least the Russians. They knew that invading force at that time. No sense, but of course you have control of the air. You know that way you shoot them up. You know how it is. Damn hard not going to be killed these. That's a good experience. World War II and then Korea. Korea completely had complete air and pound hell out of these gun sites. They're still at it.
So here's why this is important. Kennedy and his advisors and the Joint Chiefs of Staff knew that Cuba had short-range rockets that could destroy a U.S. invasion force that they wouldn't be able to take out. All this would have meant the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans in invasion, maybe even over 100,000, and then a nuclear war. But despite all that, the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to go to war anyway. They wanted to invade Cuba. And Kennedy's advisors at that point were under so much pressure that they were going along with them. It's a big fact that isn't in the history books and movies about the crisis. It's not on the History Channel. It all leaves us with a big question that no one's really grappled with. Why would the Joint Chiefs of Staff want to launch a failed invasion of Cuba and risk nuclear war? When Kennedy didn't go to war, General LeMay told him, "This is our greatest defeat in our history." Well, all this is a big issue and deals with a lot of hidden history that you'll never hear in these TV specials of the History Channel. Covered all in the book for you. Yes, just go to Amazon.com and type "The War State" at the search bar and you can get the book. It's right there. You can get it sent to your house within a few days, or buy the ebook and download it immediately on your iPad, iPhone, whatever you use to read books, Kindle, and start reading it.